Sally and Jack take a wrong turn on their way home from the drive-in. Huh? Sally turns to Jack and says,
Jack, I think we're lost. This isn't the bowling alley.
Golly gee, Sally, I think you're right.
What in blazes was that?
I don't know, but I sure hope it wasn't.
The Marsh Monster!
Hey, Elton, we're here. Are you reading a comic book?
No, I'm doing research.
Research, huh?
Marshes! As in the Marsh Monster. Look, Sally and Jack, they make a wrong turn, and where do they end up? In the marsh. And who do they run into there? The Marsh Monster, okay? It's right here. Now, finding the Marsh Monster, that would make good television.
Okay, we'll go and find the marsh monster for you.
Great.
And bring him right over to your office.
But, look, here? No, don't go to all that trouble. You know, there's not much room, and besides, I feel feverish. I feel very ill, and oh, I think I'm coming down with something. I'm going to find the doctor.
Today on CG Kids,
we're going to check out the wild, mucky, dirty, stinky, wicked wetlands of Canada.
We'll also check out the unique and fascinating Sifton Bog in southern Ontario. And go to the Y Marsh of Midland, Ontario, where we'll get a close look at the only trumpeter swan rehabilitation program in the world.
And then we'll go way up to the Arctic and blaze a trail in Canada's northern wetland near Churchill, Manitoba.
It's all up next on CG Kids.
Geographic Kids.
Marshes, bogs, fens, and swamps. They're all different types of wetlands.
And even though they may seem like murky, creepy horror movie locations, wetlands are actually vibrant, productive ecosystems that can be found on every continent in the world except Antarctica.
They act as wildlife nurseries, nesting sites, feeding grounds, and resting places. Kind of like a restaurant and an incubator all in one.
In fact, wetlands sustain more life than any other ecosystem in the world. They also play a major role in maintaining the stability of the global environment by naturally filtering water and acting as a flood barrier.
So, why are they all disappearing?
Because historically, they were perceived as useless. You can't plant crops or build on wetlands until you drain them.
Since early European settlement in Canada, their destruction was actually encouraged by the government, and many of these valuable ecosystems were either drained or filled.
Over 65% of Southern Ontario's original wetland area has been lost. That number reaches 90% in Ontario's southwest. Well, first of all, let's start off with the definition of wetland.
I'll just get out my super-sized handy-dandy dictionary. Let's see.
Edie, what are you doing? We've got the geopad.
Oh, right. That thing.
Wetland. Land that is covered by shallow water at least part of the year, and land where the water table is close to or at the surface.
So what's the difference between a swamp, a marsh, or a bog? Or we're gonna ask Joanna with the Conservation Authority. Hi, Joanna, how you doing?
Hey.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So what is the difference?
Well, in order to figure out the difference between these different habitats, we need to consider soil, water, and plants. Now, a marsh is an open wetland, and it has tall grass-like plants, cattails, and other tall non-woody plants there as well, grasses. There are never any trees found in marshes. The soil can be very, very mucky, and they're often associated with rivers. They can be found along shorelines. Now, swamps, they're quite a bit different. Swamps are wet forests, basically, and the soil, just like in a marsh, it's very mucky. It's saturated with water. Sometimes there's even standing water. The trees that live there love this wet habitat, so find species such as red maple and silver maple and shrubs like buttonbush. And so finally there's Sifton Bog. And Sifton Bog is an example of a kettle bog. It formed in a depression in the ground, and the only source of water is runoff and rainwater. The water is very acidic, and that is a result of all the sphagnum moss that's found here, and that's the indicator species for a bog. All bogs must have sphagnum moss, and it builds up underneath the floating mat as peat moss. That peat moss absorbs all of the water that's here in this depression.
So what makes the Sifton Bog a unique environment?
Well, it's not typical to have here in southwestern Ontario an acidic bog like the Sifton Bog, which is more typically found in the north.
So with so much wetland destruction, why wasn't the Sifton Bog destroyed?
Well, there have been numerous impacts on the bog over the years prior to the Conservation Authority becoming the owners and managers in the 1960s. There was an attempt to grow celery. They mined some of the peat. Some of the black spruce trees were removed for Christmas trees, but all of these business attempts, they just weren't lucrative. And so we have Sifton Bog now.
Wetlands occupy 6% of the Earth's land and freshwater surface.
So here's a demonstration of how wetlands filter water and also reduce flooding. And helping us out today are Ben and Patrick.
Hey guys.
Hey.
We have 3 boards set up, and each board has a different surface. We have one board that is just a plain board. It represents asphalt and bare soil. We have another board covered in astroturf, and this represents lawns and fields. And then our third board is covered in sponges, and this board represents wetlands. Well, what we're going to do is pour water down these boards. Water that has been contaminated with some sand and gravel, dirty water.
Okay.
All right, then let it go. All right, here comes a little bit of fresh water.
Whoa, right to the bottom.
So our next helper, Patrick's going to pour the contaminated water down the astroturf. Let's see what happens. Oh, and let's have a little bit more fresh water.
Interesting.
And now Ben's going to pour the water down the slope that represents our wetland.
Wow.
Oh, now these results are quite a bit different than the other habitats.
CGK.
So here are the results of our asphalt board. Take a look at the water in this bin. We've got lots of water and it's very, very dirty. Take a look at the water in this bin. After it's flowed through our field or lawn, there's still quite a bit of water, but it's so much cleaner. This makes a fairly effective filter. Well, and now for our wetland board, we see that the wetlands are really effective at filtering out water. There's lots and lots of sand and gravel that's been trapped, and there's very little of it in the pan. Also, there's hardly any water because wetlands are just like sponges, soaking up water and helping to reduce flooding.
Ben, Patrick, Joanna, thanks for showing us the Sifton Bog.
Yeah, it was
Great.
awesome, man.
Nice. Wetlands are pretty cool, and there's lots of life in them.
There's even a Wetlands National Park in northern Manitoba that has polar bears.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Field trip!
First stop, Wapusk National Park, the 7th largest park in Canada.
And there's our ride. All aboard! Wapusk National Park of Canada is located in an area called the Hudson-James Lowlands.
It's primarily wetland, made up of lakes, bogs, streams, and rivers. This is because of its undeveloped drainage system.
Perpetual ice, called permafrost, always lies less than 1 meter below ground.
It forms an impervious substratum. In other words, it blocks groundwater from draining into the soil. Instead, the icy ground holds excess water, creating dams and preventing the creation of outlets.
It helps create an area of very high diversity of plants and animals, including the great polar bear. About 1,200 of them congregate here yearly.
In fact, the name Wapusk is Cree, meaning white bear.
CGK Kids.
We're here at Wapusk National Park of Canada. We're going to be meeting up with Kelsey, who's a heritage communicator here at Nestor One Research Center. Hey, Kelsey.
How you doing?
Great.
How you doing, Kelsey?
Pretty good. Welcome to Wapusk. Yeah, we're just out here at Nestor One. It's primarily a Canada goose banding camp, and they've done a bit of polar bear research out here too. We are in a secure compound. The poles and that go down about 3 feet just to prevent any big furry polar bears from making an unexpected visit. I'll show you a bit of the park. It's kind of a special place where the boreal forest, you know, a lot of southern species from there like moose, red fox, even black bear meet up with a lot of Arctic species, including polar bear, Arctic fox, and caribou.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Cool. Oh, look both ways, guys. Caribou Highway.
Check out all these cool tracks.
Yeah, there's about 3,000 caribou in Wapusk National Park here, and this is one of their main ways of traveling around. It's just nice and high, it's gravel, it's dry, so they use it.
So I guess the important question is it safe to cross?
I think we should take our chances. Let's do it.
Kelsey, what are all these bumps that we find on the ground over here?
Well, these are tundra hummocks. It's pretty classic of the wet tundra found in Wapusk National Park. And, you know, this whole area is continuous permafrost, so water doesn't really drain, it just gathers in this area. When it freezes, it expands and creates these little bumps. And here we got, it's one of the last wildflowers of the season. It's called yellow mountain saxifrage, and it's actually an Arctic species, also an alpine species, so you either find it way up in the Arctic or way up in the mountains. And it actually starts blooming underneath the snow. Here's a good example of, you know, for a tree to get this size, you know, maybe 200 or 300 years old. And
So this tree that small could be 200 or 300 years old?
yeah, you know, for something to get that size up here, it's taken a long time. It's really quite amazing that this tree has done what it's done. And here we are at a little fox den. This is most likely Arctic fox since we're right along the coast, but you know, there is limited denning space in the park, so it's kind of a competition between red fox and Arctic fox for.
I see there's like bones all over the den over here. What kinds of foods do they eat?
Those are mainly goose. You know, there's a few snow geese around here and Canada geese, but you know, foxes eat a lot of lemmings as well, and Arctic foxes will also scavenge off the kills of polar bears, any ringed seal that's left over after the bear's finished its lunch.
Polar bear fur is not white. It's clear. The white color we see is actually reflected sunlight.
What are we looking at?
Shh! I'm watching it happen.
What's happening?
Isostatic rebound.
Isostatic what?
Rebound. See, the area that makes up Wapusk National Park is actually relatively young. This area is only about 9,000 years old, and at that time, the whole area was covered by a huge glacier. And by the way, glaciers are really, really heavy. They're so heavy, say this marshmallow is the landscape and my finger's the glacier. The glacier puts a great deal of pressure on the landscape, squishing it just like this. When the glacier retreats, the land expands or rebounds back to its normal height. That's isostatic rebound.
Huh. So how fast is the Earth rising?
About 1 meter every 100 years, so watch your step.
The Antarctic ice sheet is so heavy, it has compacted parts of the landscape to 2.5 kilometers below sea level. Wow, there are so many different types of wetlands and all across Canada.
I know, and there's still so much more to cover, but there's one thing we've got to get to right now.
Today's triviography question.
That's right, today's question is, what is a hydrophyte?
Here's a hint. It's not what happens when neighbors go crazy during the holidays.
George! George! Are you still putting up those Christmas lights?
Oh, the Jones across the street had 8 blinking reindeers on their roof last year. I'd like to see them beat 17 glowing elves and a Frosty.
Oh, are you still having a hydro fight with the Joneses? Oh, don't blow a fuse. You know what happened last year.
Just one more extension cord and... Oops.
And it's not the name of a movie monster.
Tokyo is under attack. Their only hope is the unlikely alliance of Mothra and Hydrophyte versus Godzilla and the Gila monster.
So what does hydrophyte mean?
The answer's coming up later in the show.
That sure was a close one, Sally.
You said it, Jack. We gave the marsh monster the slip just in time. Now we can walk around the marsh without a care in the world.
Look, Sally. Over there. It's Wetlands' friend and Canada's favorite rodent, the beaver.
I learned in class today that the beaver is referred to as the sacred center in some First Nation cultures because their dams create wetland habitats for so many species. Animals like birds.
Oh, and amphibians.
And muskrats.
And...
The marsh monster! Not again!
We're in Y Marsh in Midland, Ontario.
Why Y Marsh? Because it is a fascinating place that has been designated a Ramsar wetland. In 1971, delegates from 18 nations, including Canada, met in Ramsar, Iran, to sign an intergovernmental treaty to protect wetlands of international importance. Y Marsh was one of them.
Y Marsh is known for its trumpeter swans that come here to nest.
The trumpeter swan is the largest waterfowl species native to North America. An adult stands well over 1 meter tall. We're here with Renee. She's the wildlife manager here at Y Marsh. Hi, Renee. How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Great.
So, how many trumpeter swans are there?
Well, there used to be many trumpeter swans in this area of Canada, and then early in the 20th century, due to hunting pressures and also the encroachment of European settlement, they were extinct. Currently, there are approximately 500 birds in Ontario, all thanks to the trumpeter swan reintroduction program. And outside of the Y Marsh, there are about 150 birds that come through, and we monitor them. And within the Y Marsh, there are 5 nesting pairs of trumpeter swans.
So you just mentioned that you monitor them. How do you do that exactly?
Well, not all birds are tagged and banded, but that is the ideal situation for scientific monitoring. Each swan receives a wing tag in each wing and a band on either the left or the right leg, depending on whether they are male or female.
And what do those tags, like what kind of information do those tags have?
Well, each tag has a number, and then we are able to enter that number into a database and keep track of the families that they came from and where they are situated throughout Ontario. We have people calling in, we call them our swan spotters, and they tell us where the swans are, where they're nesting, where they're migrating to in the winter, if that's the case.
The trumpeter swan gets its name for its trumpet-like call.
Let's check in on Eldon. He's probably wondering what we're doing and if we found the marsh monster.
Oh, I think we're closing in on the marsh monster, don't you?
Yes, the old thermometer in the lamp trick that always works.
Hey, Eldon, we're closing in on the marsh monster.
Oh, I would love to have the marsh monster over, but I'm simply not well enough to entertain.
That was so sudden, Eldon. Last time we talked to you, you sounded fine.
Yes, it's one of those flash flus.
Flash flu.
Yeah, so send my apologies to the marsh monster and tell him to drop me a line next time he's in town, okay? And we'll do lunch, okay? Okay, gotta go. I think they bought it. Haha! Yeehaw!
This is Travis and Brianne, and they're junior swans. Hey guys.
Hi.
What are junior swans?
Junior swans are students wondering about nature, and we take care of things around the marsh. We take care of the invasive plant species, and we like take them out.
So what are invasive species?
An invasive species is a plant that isn't native to the area, and it spreads everywhere, and it overcompetes the other plants that are native to the areas, and like gets rid of all their nutrients so they can't survive.
So how do you tell the invasive plants?
Well, as Brian already mentioned, an invasive plant is something not native to the area. I'll use glossy buckthorn as an example. You can tell it's got shiny leaves. During the spring more, it's got blackberries, which have a type of poison in it, which creates a kind of laxative, which gives any birds or animals they ate a kind of diarrhea. And it usually creates a big cloth over the top which blocks the sunlight so the other plants down below can't get any sunlight and die.
So how do you get rid of these invasive species?
We get rid of them by not just pulling them out, because then they could spread again and keep on going. We cut them and we put on herbicide, which stops them from spreading, and that's what we do.
It's time to reveal the answer for this week's Triviography question.
That's right. Today's question is, what is a hydrophyte?
Hydra means water, and phyte means plant, so literally it means water plant. Hydrophytes grow well in wet, marshy conditions, either anchored in mud or with their roots just floating in the water. Wetlands are full of hydrophytes.
CG Kids is on the World Wide Web. Find out even more about all the incredible places that we visit on CG Kids. Just click on our website to find games, contests, and a lot more fun facts about our amazing country. Check it out.
Okay, Eldon, he digs to the right. He digs to the left. Oh, and he shoots. Oh, and he scores, and the crowd, they're going crazy. Okay, here we go. He's going for the shot then.
So, you're feeling better.
Yeah, that's the flash flu for you. Goes as fast as it comes.
Well, that's too bad, because the wetlands of Canada were absolutely fascinating. It's too bad you were sick.
We got you something.
Oh, a present?
No, an exclusive interview with the marsh monster.
Hey, he doesn't have to come here, does he?
Nope. He's right here.
Once again, CG Kids makes television history. Watch out, Barbara Walters! So we meet at last, Marsh Monster. You're very slimy. So I hope you want to apologize to Sally and Jack. Okay, here's the tough questions. Feel free to cry. If you were a tree, what tree would you be?